Good morning and welcome to the April 20th, 2022 meeting of the Lextran Board of Directors. My name is Jill Barnett and I'm the General Manager here at Lextran. With that, I will turn the meeting over to our Chairman, Mr. Harding Dowell.
Thank you, Jill. We'll call this meeting to order and take the roll. Ms. Rogers.
Here.
Dr. Capo is absent. Mr. Motley.
Here.
Mr. Schoninger.
Here.
Judge Thurston may be joining us later, but is not here now, and Mr. Ward is not here. So we do not have a quorum, so we will delay the approval of any minutes, but we will go ahead and see if there's any public comment. Seeing none and having no chair's report, we will move ahead into the performance report.
Mr. Combs will join us for the performance report for March 2022. Before he gets started, I would call your attention to a change that we have had at the federal level. Monday evening, I'm sure many of you heard that a federal judge in Florida overturned the mask mandate that has been in place for transportation entities like Lextran, also airlines and trains. That has been in place since 2021. That happened Monday evening. Some information was made available to us from TSA, and midday yesterday we also received word from the Federal Transit Administration that that mandate is not being enforced. As time has gone on, that has become increasingly difficult for us to enforce on board our vehicles. Our operators have faced challenges with that as the pandemic has worn on, and so effective midday yesterday, we have made masks optional for passengers and employees on board our vehicles. That is in keeping with what many agencies around the country are doing, the same thing that most major airlines are doing, and also the other two major transit authorities in the state of Kentucky. So that is where we are. Have made people aware that we reserve the right to amend our policy if needed, based on other federal orders or regulations that might occur, or changes in what's happening with COVID around the country. So that is where we are with that. And with that, I'll give it to Mr. Combs for our performance report.
Well, thank you and good morning to the board. I'm happy to present our March performance report. In our mission statement, we serve people in our community with mobility solutions. So to jump into highlights from last month, I think we've discussed several times the grant that was announced on March the 14th, the Bus and Bus Facilities Award of $4.1 million. No, it's not the first time you've heard of this, but I will brag on it every chance that I get. I might put it in here next month. We'll see. Also, Susan Sweat, Chief Operating Officer, and Justin Augustine, our Regional Vice President of TransDev, visited Lextran in March to meet the team and tour the property. Lextran celebrated Employee Appreciation Day on March the 4th with snacks and prizes, and Transit Driver Appreciation Day on March 18th with boxed lunches for employees. As part of our comprehensive operations analysis, we held 4 public meetings throughout the month of March with additional pop-up events at the Transit Center to solicit public input. The public comment period officially closed April the 1st. We are still evaluating the feedback that we got back. We will be happy to share with you the results of that in a future board meeting. I think the final number of comments was 209, and we are very, very pleased with that much feedback on our COA. Also to share with you the commendations for March, and not to get ahead of myself, but this is not the only commendation slide I have to share with you on March, so I'm always very happy if there's more than one. These are all bus operators. Brian Durham is always polite and friendly to all passengers and drives safely. William Marks is professional, polite, and courteous, and appears to take pride in his job. Thanks to Michelle Carson's quick reaction and attention, she was able to avoid a bad accident when a vehicle was coming toward us at a high speed. I appreciate it for keeping everyone safe. Shanitra Bell did a good job getting me to my destination safely. And the passenger's electric wheelchair ran out of power while she was on an outbound bus. Ambria Herndon helped the customer get in touch with her mother to get her charger so she could get home. Angie Jones, a customer service representative, is extremely helpful and polite. She answers questions with a smile. I lost my wallet, and Cheryl Dawson, another customer service representative, jumped right on it, calling the bus and calling me back. She got my wallet back to me quickly. I was appreciative of how nice and helpful Cheryl was.
Cheryl is also who many of you see at the front desk.
Yes.
She works double duty downtown at the Transit Center in customer service, but also here serving as our receptionist and customer service agent fairly often. So, it's awesome to know that she helped somebody with something that was on a bus, and she may have been here. So she made it happen for them. So glad to hear that.
Louis George, who's a utility worker from the maintenance department, assisted an elderly Spanish-speaking customer on a walker to get to the right bus and directed her to a waiting area so she could stay warm until her bus departed. When Route 12 departed before I could get to the bay, Eric Michaela, who's a transportation supervisor, intervened to help me get to the next departure. I appreciate the kindness he displayed. So kudos to Lextran staff that's across all departments in the month of March for their commendations.
This is the first month that I remember having 2 full slides of commendations. So awesome, awesome to see that our employees are treating people right in a way that makes an impact that someone would submit a commendation. So that was great to see.
Fred, one of those commendations brought up a question for me, and it's just curiosity. I know that in some, I'm thinking specifically about plant environments, they talk about counting not only issues or incidents, but also close calls. Mm-hmm. Do we do any kind of sort of close call analysis? Something like, where there was an avoided accident.
John?
We have a tracking system for incidents, whether they're near misses or actual events. The operators are directed to fill out the incident report, and in our risk department, which I oversee, mm-hmm. we track those incidents on location, the type, whether it's aborting, deboarding, close call with a vehicle not, driving safely. We do discuss those. I update the staff regularly. We also have a safety and security review committee, which is part of our recent upgrade to the agency safety plan we were required to do a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. And we meet monthly with various departments, and that's one of the things we look over to determine trends, things we can change, route deviations, changes in things we may do at the transit center if there are problems with boardings or lightings, those type of things. So we track those and monitor it, and at the end of the year, we also do an overview annually to see if there's some things we can change or make modifications to. So
great. That's all great to hear.
Yes.
John also educates us very frequently on the concept of 329 and 1. So 300 close calls could lead to 29 near misses or minor accidents, leading to your 1 potentially fatal or major accident. So he tells us that very often and trains people on that very often. One thing that we may consider in the future is a capital purchase of a system known as Smart Drive or Drive Cam, and that is an onboard camera system that does a better job of allowing you to detect those near misses and close calls and be more proactive in offering coaching to the operators on how to avoid those things and help you prevent that major accident. We don't have a system like that right now, and so we depend on feedback from the operators or feedback that we get out in the community in order to properly coach on those things, rather than sit and review hours of video footage just looking for something. Sure. So that might be something that we consider as we move forward for a safety feature to increase safety aspects on our bus.
Thanks, Rick. Keep going.
To jump into ridership for March, I think last month we talked about some of those underlying indicators that would lead us to believe that ridership is increasing. I think we see that again in March. Now, we're going to talk a little bit in a moment when we get to the change relative to monthly average in March is the first time that we've got 2 months of pandemic data included in our monthly average. So we have March of 2020, which was the first month that was impacted by the pandemic, and March of 21. So our, the gray line that we've been tracking is now going to start to feel closer to what we're doing in real time. That's not to say what I'm going to show you when we get to the change relative to monthly average slide is really good, but I want to make sure that there's 2 different factors that's going into this analysis. So when you interpret this chart, you see January, February, March, we've stepped up every month. Compared to March of 2021, compared to March of 2020, we're doing really well. And I'll show you that in hard numbers in a moment. I just want you to know that the average is now going to incorporate more information and things are going to start to converge together. Paratransit, March of 2022 was, I think, the best month that we've had since the pandemic started. And that is really impressive. That, I mean, February was a little bit dicey. January was down below where we were the previous year. And then March, we came back pretty strong. So here's our percent change relative to the monthly average. And this is the way that we've looked at ridership across the pandemic to see, you know, where we were before the pandemic and then how far we are off of that number. And again, you've got the monthly average now incorporating 2 years of pandemic data, so that's going to drop the average slightly. You know, we've got 7 years of data in that average, so it's not completely overtaking it, but it is decreasing it a little bit. But if you look at fixed route, we're at negative 20%, by far the strongest month that we've had throughout the pandemic. Hopefully we can keep that momentum going into April and on into the summer. Same way with paratransit, we're at about 8%. So both very, very strong numbers. We'll have to keep up the good momentum and keep up the good work moving into the summer.
Fred, do you know if we've seen spikes in particular parts of the system, or has this been a pretty steady uptick across the system?
We've seen a pretty steady uptick in different places. The hot spots may be a little
Hotter?
that's where your spikes might happen more so. But yeah, different parts of the industrial Mercer Road corridor, we've seen pretty good numbers there. Nicholasville Road has been pretty strong. Around campus has been pretty strong. So your usual suspects have done pretty well. So here we are, our system productivity charts. So 258,000 trips in March. That's about 35,000 more trips than we did last March. So we're up about 16%. System-wide, year-to-date, we're up about 250,000 trips, which is about 13.5%. So, you know, we're really looking strong on the ridership side. Those metrics, trips per mile and trips per hour, they are, again, ahead of where we are on the year-to-date, which that's part of those underlying factors and trends that we look at to see how things might shake out in the future. And then on paratransit side, 15,751 trips, very, very strong compared to the previous year. Safety, March was a little bit rocky. I think we're over 3 on our preventable accidents per 100,000 miles, and I know John is already looking into some steps to take to make sure nothing gets out of hand. I don't think anything is too far out of the realm of reasonable, but it is a tick ahead of where we've been for the year. Same for injury frequency rate. And then those other metrics, days of lost time, workers' compensation claim, they go hand in hand with injury frequency and accidents. So I think things are playing out about as you would expect. No preventable accidents on wheels in March. Maintenance on preventable maintenance inspections, 43 out of 43 in March, so that perfect streak continues. And then miles between roll calls was 6,586. That is the performance report for March. Happy to answer any questions. And if not, I will turn it over to Nikki for the financials.
Thank you, Fred.
I have a couple questions. I just
Oh,
don't like to be
sure.
the first person. No.
You get to be the first person.
Okay, so also looking through the packet we got also some great press this month on the federal grant that was received. So I just wanted to congratulate Lextran on that, the press. And then I also noticed all the meetings that happened. I know this is a lot of what Emily does on the public meetings, so congratulations on that. And then the COA public meetings that you mentioned, so we had 200 total. Were any of those more, the Douglas Park one or the Gainesway one, or had the largest attendance?
I would say the last one that we did at the Village Branch Library on Purcell's Road had the largest attendance. We did the one here, we broadcast virtually. So we had both folks in the audience and watching, I don't know what our number was of viewers as that was going on. But I would say, yes, those two had the most attention.
The Village Branch and then the public, the one here. And then you said 200 we're happy with that number.
Yeah. And a lot of that is, us at the transit center grabbing, we've got our exhibits and we're like, hey, come, let us talk you through this. What do you think? I mean, we got most of those comments really from interaction, face-to-face interaction at the transit center.
Well, congratulations on that. I know public engagement is a big effort. And then I also saw there was employee graduation.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit more about that. Are those the recent hires or?
So since the pandemic had started, we had not had as much opportunity to do employee graduations when operators transition out of the training program or maintenance employees transition out of the training program. And so we actually had 2 sessions that were kind of joint sessions for anyone who had graduated or completed their process in the last couple of years, had the opportunity to be recognized. They can invite a guest, and also sometimes, other members of the workforce come, to recognize their work too. But typically, that is something that we would do after every class of new hires that completes their training and crosses over from the training side into revenue service. Revenue service is the word that we use for an operator, but for a maintenance employee being able to work on their own. So hopefully, as we move forward, you will see more of that in your monthly packet.
And then, because I know we've had several discussions about the open positions and recruiting and retention. So I just wanted to note congratulations on having the graduation.
Sure, thank you.
And then on our packet, I also see still about 20 open positions.
We have a number of open positions in terms of operations. We also have some maintenance supervisor positions. Sorry, that's me.
Usually that's me, yeah.
And a couple of positions on the administrative side too.
And then I know in our budget, we also are approving some additional positions.
Right.
So will there, and maybe we can talk about the budget, any concern that we have 20 open positions plus we're adding more positions?
Obviously have concern that the positions are not filled, but in the event that we are able to start making strides towards closing that gap, wanted to have the room to add the positions that we expect we will need in the event we add some service and to backfill some of the other positions too.
And now I had another one up here. Oh yeah, just the note about the kind of the best month ever in terms of ridership. I know you already went over this, but any other indication to why? Do we kind of see that, I think that'll level off in the summer? Do you think that trend will hold through?
I think it'll level off a little bit in the summer. I think what we need to look forward to is what's going to happen in August and September when the semesters start back again. So that's when we'll see ridership tick back up. But even compared to, you compare June to June, July to July. So we just need to see how things compare month to month. But I do have one more note on the COA engagement.
Mm-hmm.
That 209 pieces of feedback we got back, that doesn't count if we're at the transit center and we say, hey, come look at our stuff. They look at it and they're like, oh, that's cool. And so we talked with many more people than 200. That's just the amount of actual comments that we have recorded.
And then do you, and maybe it's hard, do you feel like you have a pulse on, of most of our riders, they feel like because you grabbed people, they understood the process or understood there may be ridership changes or?
I do, and that's a very personal way to get it across because I only might ride Route 12. Mm-hmm. So that's what I'm interested in. I need to know what changes are going on Route 12. So Emily shows me exactly, this is what's going on in Route 12. I might not quite as worried what happens on Route 10 or some other route. But we can go on your individual trip and explain to you how things are going to change, if things are going to change, what is going to improve for you. And I think that was really a really powerful way to do things.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Collins.
Thank you.
All right. Would you like Ms. Falconberry to deliver the financials, or would you like to jump ahead to the action items since Judge Thurston has joined us?
Why don't we take advantage of Judge Thurston's time while we have it and move ahead to action items, if that's all right with you, Nikki? All right. The first action item, Resolution 2022-06, is the fiscal year 2023 operating budget. Appreciate everybody's attendance last week at the work session. I thought that was very helpful. Are there any further comments or questions from the board about the budget that, what we call a parking lot issue that came to you over the week? All good? Our one attending member of the finance committee, all good?
I've now seen the budget multiple times, so I'm
You're
good.
settled, okay. Then I would entertain a motion to
So
approve.
moved. I'll
Thank you.
second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Judge Thurston has turned her camera on and is showing her hand. So
Thank you.
It appears we have a vote.
Okay, so that one is approved.
Right.
We'll move on to Resolution 2022-07, which formally adds Juneteenth, or June the 19th, as a paid holiday for all employees. I will never forget Juneteenth because I got married on Juneteenth, so I appreciate the federal government making my anniversary unforgettable. So, are there any questions about this?
I'll make a motion.
All right, Christian makes a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Excellent.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Judge Thurston. And finally, or I should say, there's one more after this, right? Resolution 2022-08, a resolution to award a contract for HVAC services. Jill, did you want to give a little color on this?
Sure. This is normal course of business for our HVAC services contract. Our existing contract is reaching its point of expiration. So as is normal process, we released an RFP for HVAC services. Proposals received on March 24th. Staff Evaluation Committee reviewed and approved those for compliance and responsiveness, and we received 2 responsive proposals from DeBra and Alpha Mechanical. And Alpha Mechanical received the highest ranking evaluation and is recommended today for a contract award. So the pricing is based on straight time, overtime, and double or holiday time. And the term here will be for 1 year with 2 options available for an additional year of service each time. And so I would recommend that that the board approve this and authorize me to execute a contract with Alpha Mechanical.
Is Alpha Mechanical a local company?
Yes. They're based in Louisville, but they're also here in Lexington,
Okay,
yes.
thank you. And does this cover the entire physical plant of the agency? So any facilities that we have that have HVAC, they would be covered?
Yes.
Any other questions?
And it's not a DB supplier?
I don't believe so, no.
No. No, motion to approve.
Okay, thank you, Jamie. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And then,
If I could ask for we do have another resolution today that was not originally included in your board packet. However, it was sent to you yesterday. And this is a resolution to approve a change order with Gillig Corporation. Gillig is the bus manufacturer that we use. And the board approved a resolution back in October for the purchase of buses. However, we do have a change order that exceeds my authority here. So I would ask if we could consider that today.
I move to temporarily suspend the bylaws pursuant to Article 4, Section 4, to consider Resolution 2022-09 during today's meeting.
Thank you. All right. The resolution here that is before you is for an amount of $12,548 per bus for a total of $50,192 total. And what this includes is a driver's protection barrier for each bus, a total it's about $6,000 per bus. We do not have any of these driver protection barriers at the present time. However, we have encountered some issues within the last year or so, and have discussed with some operators. Basically, this is a demo option that we're going to demo this rather than just going, full fleet and installing them. We want to be able to get some driver feedback. We had committed to them that before we did something like that we would get their feedback on some different options. This change order also includes the 2-way radio. We have typically been able to take a radio from an existing bus that we're retiring and put it on a new bus that we receive. However, we're not going to be able to do that this time. It also includes some pricing changes for the Avail intelligent transportation system that is on board, and the video system that is on board. So the total change order amount is $50,192, and the source of funds will be the local mass transit fund. I have revised the funding table on your resolution to reflect this change, and we'll be happy to entertain any questions.
Would the driver barrier system be able to be retrofitted onto existing buses, or is it specifically tailored to these new buses?
It would be able, this is a type of door that we would be able to get for existing vehicles as well. We're taking advantage of the opportunity to have it installed at the factory to see if folks like it. If they do, and it's something that we want to install fleet-wide, we would be able to do that here.
The driver, the V-shield protection barrier, is that in any way connected to the barriers we were putting up because of COVID, or is this something different entirely?
This is something different entirely. This functions more, almost more as a door that would close. They can close the driver compartment, and it's less a function of COVID and more for driver safety. About 3 years ago, during the APTA Mobility Conference that was taking place in Louisville, while the conference was taking place, there was a driver in Tampa, Florida, who was stabbed and murdered on their route. There was no shield like this available, but that incident really brought this as a topic of conversation. There's a lot of larger cities that have this type of shield available. We have had some things happen. Recently, one of our female operators had a male reach across her while she was driving to try to access some of the driver controls. There's another operator who at one point has had a knife pulled on them. These are pretty rare occurrences, but we don't want that rare occurrence to turn into something, something that could have been prevented. So this is just something that we are trying out.
I can appreciate that this is a decision that we're making alongside operators.
Yes.
And kind of testing it as a strategy before we go full bore. I also just want to take the opportunity to say that in high school, I took my the radio out of my friend's 92 Grand Am and put it in a 92 Corsica. And I never thought about, the idea that you can do that with buses, so.
Yes, certainly can. I'll know who to call if I need some radio assistance, Mr. Motley.
Oh, it was all trial and error. It was chaos. But
Well,
yeah, we did it.
Don't forget that, Mr. Withrow, if you need some backup assistance
Need extra hands,
on
just let me
the
know.
ITS side, yes.
So I know in some of our early accommodation notes, there was some concern about the plastic creating some type of,
Glare.
or I was thinking like disconnect between the riders
Like
and
social
the bus
media.
drivers. Yeah, what were you saying?
Social barrier.
Yeah, social barrier, but there was just some thought that they can't be as cordial or as friendly, and so that, I think there was one of our meetings where it was noted that may be one of the reasons we're getting some more discouragement. And I know this is a pilot, and I'm fully supportive, and I like the idea of a pilot to
Sure.
kind of engage it. So just wondering, or if we keep an eye on that, if it creates any more discouragement or disconnect between the rider and the operator.
Certainly something that we will be mindful of as we move forward with implementation. These also have, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, but I think the option we have selected to try on the front end has a window, an automatic window that they can roll down or up for an interaction with a passenger. And what is also slightly different about this versus the barrier that we had installed previously was the barrier we used, at the height of COVID was behind them and created even more physical distance between the driver and any passengers that might have been on board trying to talk with them or anything like that. This is very, very close to them, right on the driver compartment, and does have that window feature. So certainly something that we'll intend to be mindful of as we move forward.
When you say pilot, is there a certain number of Gillig buses, or is it all the Gillig buses?
These are the first four. So for now, it will just be these.
Okay.
If as we get feedback, drivers don't necessarily like this type or would like to see something else, maybe on a future build, we could consider a different style. and try to get some of that feedback as well. But for now, it's these 4 to start.
Any other questions?
I make a motion to approve.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right,
All right.
thank you.
Judge Thurston, while we have you, we're going to mix up the order once again and go back to the approval of the March 22 board meeting minutes, since we need a quorum to approve those. Have those been reviewed by the board, and are there any questions or corrections?
Motion to approve the minutes?
Seeing, is there a second?
That's second.
No questions.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
Christian.
Thank you. Judge Thurston, thank you for joining us so we could go through these action items. I appreciate you doing that.
No problem. Thank you all. I appreciate the accommodation. I've got to jump. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. Okay. I think we're back on track now with the change order report.
If we could go back to the financials, if that's okay.
Oh, of course,
Mr.
sorry.
Falconberry.
Nick, you didn't really care. You just do these every month for fun.
She would have let us go through that. She said the budget's approved, let's go on.
I'm
But
good at skipping it.
Ms. Falconberry will deliver our financial report for the month of March, and that can be found on page 15 of your board packet.
Okay, if you look at the balance sheet, you'll notice our cash is up. For the month, we received some grant funding. It's all about timing with grant funds, and we did receive some in March, so that's why that balance is a little bit higher. There are really no significant changes on the balance sheet, but I'll be glad to answer any questions. Okay, statement of revenue and expenses. Property taxes are still looking good. We are right on track with our budget, about $350,000 over what we budgeted for this time. And we're about $1.2 million over where we were this time last year. So part of that is timing of when taxes are paid, but also the increase that we are receiving this year. Passenger revenue is up, as Fred mentioned. We had as fiscal year total, $722,000. This is more than we budgeted. We were not sure, of course, how ridership was going to come back, but we're glad to see that. Federal funds, as I mentioned, we received in the month of March. Our expenses, our wages are over. If you'll remember from the March, we had the premium pay that was for anyone who worked from March of 2020 through February of 2022. So that caused our payroll to be over, along with the ratification bonus that we had back in the fall. So we are under in some other items, so we're not worried about that at all. Our professional services are under. Chris and I have talked about some of the bus rebuilds. He's going to try to do some of those the engine rebuilds before the end of June. However, we need to keep those buses on the street, so it's all about timing for those. Materials and supplies, of course, are up. We're still under budget. We do look for that to be over because of the everything becoming more expensive, and we're having continued to have issues receiving parts, and things are on back order and things like that. So diesel fuel, we budgeted $2.20. For the new budget, if you remember, we budgeted $4.25. The price this week was $4.11. So we've been hovering between around $4 and about $4.15 in the last couple of weeks. So we're continuing to watch that. The fuel other, that includes CNG and gasoline for the service vehicles. That is over budget a little bit due to CNG vehicles and the timing of when those buses came in versus when the budget was done last year. So we did reduce some of the diesel and increase some of the CNG for the new budget because of how many CNG buses we have now. But everything else is under budget, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Someone else has asked questions. So, property tax, really excited that we're close there. this is at 3%, and then next year we propose 3.5%. So it'd
Correct.
just be, I think, curious for us to watch what property tax does over the next year. And then wages, you already addressed, was over, and then we already mentioned that there's the 20, I think my always thought is that we have 20 open positions, so if we ever fill those positions, we're already over on wages, so what will that gap look like?
We're hoping to, when we get some of those positions filled, it'll cut down a little on overtime. We do have several of those being administrative positions, which will not affect the overtime, but we're always going to have overtime due to people being on long-term leave or people, calling in sick, things like that. So I think we're gonna be fine for the year.
And then professional services, remind me, since we're $500,000 under, will that get to the 1.2 for the year for professional services, or no?
I don't think so. Most of that is for contract maintenance for the vehicles. We're hoping, we've not been able, every year we budget for engine rebuilds, transmissions, things like that. It's all about timing when we can send those buses. We've had some buses that were delayed being repaired at other vendors, so we have not been able to send those. But we're hoping that we can do that before June 30th. But I still think we're going to be under budget in that number.
And
We've also had to delay sending some of them, not just service related that we need them, but when we have sent some, it has taken us so long to get them back that maybe we've held back sending another one that we might, maybe normally we would have 3 there, but now we're not doing that because we know how long it can take to get back. So that's slowed that process a little bit as well.
And then is professional services also where the downtown transit center rebuild is out of?
No, that would be from the capital
Cap-
budget. The professional services includes the audit, the management contract for TransDev. It includes our payroll services. It includes any outside IT assistance that Fred or Alan need. It also includes contract maintenance for the buildings as well as the vehicles.
Do we know what the reason that the rebuilds have taken longer? Is that supply chain driven, or is it just they're busy? Or?
Some of its parts, Chris has also made us aware that some of the vendors that we use, whereas they might have normally ran 2 shifts, now they're down to 1. So they're also having a little bit of labor issue as well. So it's many factors are playing into that.
Okay, because that was going to be my next question: is have we discussed with these contract maintenance vendors, doing off-hour rebuilds? But it sounds like this is not the kind of thing that happens overnight, quite literally.
Any other questions? I want to thank you for approving the budget. I feel like we dove deep into the budget and feel good about it, and we appreciate your support. So thank you.
Thank you for the hard work.
Thank you.
I'll channel my inner George and say thank you for everyone for the budget process. I know we spent several meetings looking at it, and thank you for everyone.
Thank you.
Okay. Now we can do the change order report.
Yes, now we can move to the change order report. So, get back there. Have 3 change orders to report to you today for the purposes of information. They are all, 2 of them are with contracts. Our contract for advertising services, on board our vehicles, and our contract for legal services with McBrayer. And we have Addison here with us today. Both of those will have an extension. Advertising vehicles will be a 1-year extension beyond the end of that contract. And so a new RFP will go out at about this time next year. And similar with legal services, however, legal services is a 6-month extension to the end of this calendar year. Also a type of contract that will require a formal procurement, and a new procurement will take place at that time. Our pricing with McBrayer, as well as our revenue with advertising vehicles, the revenue structure that's agreed upon in the contract will remain the same for these time periods. Our change order for Shellcon, they are our contractor for bus stop enhancements. The change is approximately $31,000 and a little bit of change. We are increasing the number of shelter installations versus what the board originally voted on and what was originally quoted in the contract back in the fall, I believe. So we're increasing that by $31,000. We have the opportunity now to do some additional shelter installs, and so we wanted to take advantage of that while they're, able to mobilize for the other installs that they're doing.
How many did we add?
Is it 11? 9.
We added 9 or the total's 9?
We added 9. So the total's right under 30. Is that correct?
I'll have to double check some
Okay.
of shelters.
Well, and I know that when we had this conversation about shelters a year ago, it was going to be a big push. So I appreciate all the additional effort around shelters. I think Rick at the time had a very aggressive shelter goal,
Yes.
aspirational goal, so I appreciate the effort
Yes.
there.
And do appreciate you, Jimmy, for remembering that is an initiative that we've taken at the board level previously. So this is not just staff continuing to come back for additional work here. So that is something that we've agreed upon through the budgeting process and through some board initiatives. So pleased with that.
Great, thank you.
All right.
Any old business?
I do not have any old business to report today.
I don't know if this is technically a new business. It probably should have gone in the chair's report, but I didn't think of it at the time. I saw on Twitter, where I get most of my news, that the Pensacola Park Neighborhood Association
Okay.
has put out a proposal, or manifesto, whatever you want to call it, advocating for a light rail line on Nicholasville Road. And I didn't know if we had done any engagement with that neighborhood as part of Imagine Nicholasville Road, but I saw in the list of meetings that we had attended some similar groups, and I wonder if it wouldn't behoove us to engage with that group who has shown some political will and heft in the past, and see if we can build an advocacy relationship there.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Proposed agenda items.
We have a couple of proposed agenda items that I wanted to quickly walk you through. The first one is the procurement policy update. Now you're probably asking yourself, didn't we just recently have an update to the procurement policy? And that is true, we did in recent months. However, we have recently discovered that there was an update to KRS 45A in June of 2019, of which we were not aware at the time that we updated our procurement policy. And so those two items are now inconsistent, and that is the dollar threshold that the state establishes for a small purchase, as long as small purchase procedures are in place. We did not get that update into our policy, so want to ensure that is there, and that is offering us a little bit more flexibility, particularly at this time when the cost on so many things has increased.
So it raises the small dollar purchase?
Yes, the
That doesn't need a board approval, or?
The threshold for an item to go for competitive procurement was previously $20,000, and it is now $30,000. So that update will incorporate that. We will also have a comprehensive operations analysis update in the coming month or two, and an update on our canopy project. Those are the things that I know of at the present time, but always subject to add some additional items.
And then my only other note before we close out, this is going to your opening comment about the removal of the mask. I just didn't want to bypass that because I know that's been a big initiative by this administration, as well as the operators that have taken on a lot of that. I don't know, enforcement's probably not the right word, but enforcement and social engagement. So I wanted to just note the appreciation and make sure that we fully address that. If I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to
Sure.
say, since it is a big change in.
It is a big change, and the one thing that I would stress is that, while it is not required, it is certainly optional. We have asked the public for their patience, and in changing the way that we do things, and if there's messaging that we need to update there. And certainly also would take this opportunity to ask that people be respectful of others and their wishes to continue to wear masks if they so choose. Also would say that it is still a recommendation from the Centers for Disease Control that masks be worn on board public transit, and so people can consider that as well.
I'm very appreciative of the operators that have been on the front line of having to work with the riders and the public and semi-enforce it on transit.
Certainly, if nothing else, just communicating the requirement that we, that we are required to follow and attempt to enforce and get their compliance. But that has been certainly a big lift throughout the time of the pandemic, and particularly in recent months as so many requirements in so many places have changed.
And transit was one of the kind of last to require it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and in the, knowing that not everybody gets their news the same way or at the same time, I think to that point about communicating to our riders, there's been signage in the buses that have said masks are required. I think it's worthwhile to not just take those signs out, but to say masks are optional. So that it sort of creates a permission structure, I think, for riders who would feel more comfortable wearing a mask to do so.
Sure.
All right. Any need for closed session today?
I do not have anything.
Okay. Then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion.
We'll have to
Christian.
adjourn by consensus.
Oh, we don't? Okay. Bye, everyone.
Oh, yeah.